The Taliban in Afghanistan defeated the West, and its neighbours are queuing up to sign trade deals with the regime. Money versus Western values. Money always wins in the region. We had the watches, they had the time. Is it the time to adopt this approach? Join me, Jan Darasz, for How We Got Here.
Central Asian countries are increasingly engaging with Taliban-led Afghanistan, despite the group's restrictive policies, particularly towards women. This shift in diplomatic and economic relations marks a significant change in the region's approach to Afghanistan. Kyrgyzstan recently removed the Taliban from its list of terrorist organizations, signaling a move towards normalization. Turkmenistan has resumed work on the Turkmenistan-Afghanistan-Pakistan-India gas pipeline project, a major initiative designed to transport up to 33 billion cubic meters of natural gas annually from Turkmenistan to South Asia. This project, first conceived in the 1990s, has faced numerous delays due to instability in Afghanistan. The resumption of TAPI is seen as a potential economic boom for both countries, with Kabul expected to earn about $500 million in transit fees each year. Uzbekistan has also taken significant steps to engage with Afghanistan. In August, Uzbek Prime Minister Abdullah Oripov visited Kabul, marking the highest-level visit by a foreign official since the Taliban took power. During this visit, Uzbekistan and Afghanistan signed cooperation agreements worth $2.5 billion, covering sectors such as energy, agriculture and manufacturing. Despite these developments, the future of such projects remains uncertain due to Western sanctions on the Taliban administration and the lack of official recognition of the Taliban government. No country has formally recognized the Taliban, which complicates funding and investment efforts.
Our guest today is Dr. Ellias Aghili Dehnavi of the Abhaseed Foundation based here in Warsaw. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
Great to have you. The Taliban in Afghanistan, anyone who's, I suppose, my age, has followed their development and origin since the 1970s. Can you just give us a broad brush outline of the Taliban regime, how its origins, development, and how it has evolved? Is it a sophisticated set of people, or is it still this idea of a very reactionary, backward-looking, ultra-Islamist ideological organization?
Well, it's indeed a very interesting question, and of course for our audience who wants to have a broader information and understanding of this group, because they've been hearing the name of Taliban since 2001.
Quite, yes.
Yeah, in previous that I don't think that, prior to that year, we had this mass media revolution. Like I'm saying something here and people in Washington, D.C. hear the same thing at the same time. So I would like to start with the Soviet Union invasion, because it seems like that the Russians have a long story of invasion when it comes, to different parts of the world. So they thought that yes, we can go to this region, we can invade them based on their ideology and plans at that specific historical period. So this ideology of resistance started at that time, that some religious people, religious students called Pashtun, started to learn the military tactics to have some not classic forms of confrontation with the Soviet Union soldiers. So they started to fight back in the 90s, and then they took the power. The Soviet Union fled the country. In 1994, the so-called president of Taliban occupied Kandahar province, and in 1996, Kabul fell. They were in power from 1996 to 2001, when we had the incident in the United States. So the American army and the coalition invaded Afghanistan, and they toppled down the Taliban government. But they were not quite successful in terminating the whole group. So they were still active in the shadows of the Afghanistan valleys. The main ideology of this group is based on a different section and different code of conducts, let's say. Since they are religious people and Pashtuns, they have some sort of traditional codes. Honor, revenge, and also religion comes first. Or let's say religion is everything. So they have this strict interpretation of Islamic law called Sharia. And they said the government should be ruled based on this Sharia. And they kind of practice the very basic and let's say rudimentary rules and principles of Islam dates back to 1,400 years ago. They said the real Islamic society should look like history. It's like a Renaissance, but not for the better. A Renaissance for the worse.
When we look at the pictures of the United States aircraft flying out of Kabul, they won. What's the nature of the regime? Did this give them a carte blanche to establish whatever form of government this very hardline regional plus religious character, and it gave them this huge residual power, not only hardware but a moral sort of victory. They're there, and what do their neighbours think about that? Were they the neighbouring countries, neighbouring societies?
Well, let's move forward with the first question. The fact is that when such a group, such a religious ideologue group takes control in a country that doesn't have a written or confirmed constitution, people start to think, the people of a society start to think based on what law and based on what merit or not merit will I be executed? What should I do? What is wrong? What is not wrong? You know, it is hard to kind of adjust your actions. It is hard to adjust your daily life. You wake up in the morning as a woman, you go out, you're not wearing your clothes properly, they arrest you on the street, or you're a man, it doesn't matter. There's a set of strict law, and some people are non-conformists, that's why they wanted to flee the country. So, because technically speaking, it's a new form of extremism.
Yes.
And no one else can help you from outside because they've done their best for 20 years and they've done nothing. And the second question, we can divide the countries confronting Afghanistan, or let's say Taliban regime, in two groups. There is this group of pragmatists that wants to deepen their relation with Taliban regime, and they are having a pragmatic perspective. Well, technically speaking, referring to international law, United Nations has set a very specific, clear rules regarding Taliban regime. Do not recognize them. So all these interactions are pragmatic and based on regional mechanisms. A country like Turkmenistan, for instance, that has a very pragmatic vision when dealing with Taliban. They are working on this pipeline called TABI. It's Turkmenistan, yes. Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, and the Indians and Pakistanis are the two important end user of the natural gas of Turkmenistan. This natural gas is being kind of exported from a region, if I'm not mistaken, called Gilgamesh in Turkmenistan, and it should pass a very long way through Afghanistan. That's why that on 11th of September, the head of People Councils of Turkmenistan, Mr. Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov, met with one of the Taliban's figure in the city of Sehratabad to discuss the negotiation, because this is a very important project for Turkmenistan, and at the same time it can help the Taliban kind of financial reservoir, $5 million a year.
Well, this is the point. It's a revenue earner for the Taliban, and it's only strengthening them, isn't it? I mean, this is the, for example, if we move on to the subject of women, we've covered this on TVP World, ghastly conditions and oppression of women. Recent meeting of Afghan women in Albania and wanting the UN to sort out a structure by which gender apartheid is recognised. This is all very noble and liberal, but ultimately the Taliban are going to get the money from this and become stronger. And that's not. Does it seem naive to hope that they're going to change because of this? Surely not.
Well, when we talk about international relations, we're talking about the equations of power. And for some small, fractions like Taliban, money is everything. Like if you have the money, you can control. And they only need their own people. They don't need that bureaucratic system to control or impose on people of their society. They've got Mr. X, they've got Miss Y, they pay them money, and they do everything for them in the society. So technically speaking, they don't need that hierarchy that we have in the United Kingdom, European Union, or United States. So what matters here is money. And fortunately or unfortunately, some of these Central Asian countries feel like that, okay, our projects are standing behind the line. So we have to continue our negotiation with Taliban in order not to lose. Because it was the Uzbekistan Prime Minister Abdullah, it was Uzbekistan, President or Prime Minister that visited Taliban, and they delisted them from their terrorist group. So did Kyrgyzstan, so did some other countries in Central Asia. Iran is having an unofficial interaction with Taliban leaders. So you see, pragmatism is another side of the story, and the humanitarian condition is another side of the story. I guess as long as they have the money and as long as they have their own cronies in the region, then they can play.
Yes. Is the Taliban an expansionist, ideologically driven organisation, or is it content to stay within its, as you mentioned just now, the region, its own ethnic clan basis?
Well, they will love to expand if they have the opportunity. Why not?
So they want to conquer Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan.
Well,
Pakistan.
hopefully they don't have the power and they don't have the power and mechanism. Yes. But yet, yeah. But if they have it once, they can penetrate. As I say, it's not a classical form of invasion, like what we had in European Union, like what Napoleon Bonaparte did, or what the Russian Tsars did, or even what we are witnessing now, the unfortunate condition in Ukraine. It's not like that. It doesn't work like that. It's an ideology that penetrates in the neighboring countries through different forms, like immigration. Imagine a condition like this. You're having a neighbor like Iran and Tajikistan. Like 1 million people flee your country and move into Iran. You don't have passports, you don't have ID card with you, and the border guard cannot contain
them away, yes.
So they enter the country. You don't know about their identity, you don't know who these people are, and Taliban works like that. They go out, daylight, they sell meat, they sell bread, and at night, in the shadow, you see they have this Kalashnikov AK-47 and they march. So this huge population of Afghan refugees, who knows? Perhaps it's a camouflage. So replying back to the equation of expansion, they can expand their ideology through this kind of new techniques that I believe the security studies scholars must put this new phenomena into spotlight.
You mentioned that the ideology behind the Taliban is very strict.
It indeed is.
Is this going to cause friction between the neighbouring states, the states that it wants to expand into, perhaps, or is this going to soften the Taliban's stance? How do you see that?
Well, everything depends on how well they can maintain their current bureaucratic structure. As long as they have the necessary resources to continue and maintain their current state of affair, they don't need to soften any relations with their neighbor. Like there was an documentary 3 or 4 days ago that the Iranian national TV played, and the representative of the Taliban didn't stand up while the national anthem of Iran was playing. Like he was sitting like this, and all the other heads of states were just paying respect, and he was sitting. And when he was interviewed later, he said that no, like in our Sharia, in our belief, music is forbidden, so we don't respect to that kind of how can I say, symbolism.
Yes.
So they're that kind of people.
It has this kind of universalism about the primary position of Islam, but yet it deals with states.
Let's say that's the Taliban
nations.
interpretation of Islamic Sharia. Like we have Bible, and if I want to have a religious community, I just impose my own interpretation of Bible. And they say, oh, this interpretation seems nice. And let's be a sect. And I'm the leader, and they are my sect. So that's a new, strict interpretation. And imagine this integration into modernity, that how this extremism is integrating into modernity. They're using cell phones, they're using satellites, they're using the American equipments, thanks to the US Army that left everything behind so Taliban can flourish.
A final question to you, Doctor. What's the our notion of the region, the Afghanistan, the nature of Afghanistan, women inside Afghanistan? Are we just naive to believe that this will change ever, or is it something that the Taliban now are on a pedestal? They have their, as you say, this great power. We need to play the long game with them. We can't really do much to change the regime, can we?
Well, back then in the 80s...
Or is it up to the neighbours themselves?
Well, I want to answer the question in 2 ways. Back then in the 80s, slavery was a law in the United States. That was part of Constitution, written or unwritten. And then we had a civil war in the United States, and the bad law turned into good law. So the slavery was kind of vanished, it was vaporized. I'm not saying that we need another civil war in Afghanistan. I'm just saying an example of the law, because the Taliban is saying that's the law and you have to respect the law. This is the first approach. And the second approach is that as long as some powerful countries like China and the Russian Federation are having a modified relation with Taliban, the other powers cannot do much. We are not dealing with the international law here in Afghanistan because it's a very complicated geopolitical mechanism. So if something has to change, it should be universal. We cannot have the Chinese and the Russians here having modified and softened relation with Taliban, fueling them, and the European Union and the US and other allies on the other side trying to punish Taliban. They don't care.
Yeah, yes, and so long as you say, you have the Russians and the Chinese, they're facts.
Imagine the amount of extremism. Like, I'm not saying that, for instance, Chinese are extremists or they're fueling them, but they're softening the relation and they're encouraging the other neighbors to do the same. Yeah. They're encouraging them to do the same. So if anything wants to happen inside the society of Afghanistan, because the people, as long as I know, the people don't have the necessity, they don't have the means to fight back for their right. If you say something, your life is in danger. So it's better that the international community, by resorting to the means of power, do something to better the condition of women. Because if you let it to the Afghan society to do something, it's not like that they don't want to change. They don't have the means. They don't have the support. So they see their lives in danger and they cannot do anything.
Yes, it's taken a...
Unfortunate.
Yes, it's a terrible situation. But thank you very much, Dr. Dehnavi, for coming onto the programme.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much.
Great,
Have a lovely day. Thank you.
And that's all we have time for today. So do join us next time for How We Got Here.